Welcome on this 50th anniversary year of the halting of the Cross Florida Barge Canal, and it also happens to be World Wetlands Day. I'm Margaret Spontak, Chair of the Free the Ocklawaha Coalition for Everyone. The coalition is made up of 40 national, state, and local nonprofit organizations, as well as other businesses and groups. Our organizations represent millions of people across the Florida and the nation. Later, we're going to announce the results of our recent Action Alert campaign, inviting Governor Ron DeSantis to free the Ocklawaha River. And we will also introduce you to all our members and supporters. The organization's mission is to restore the Ocklawaha as a free-flowing river, reconnecting the Ocklawaha, Silver Springs, and the St. Johns River, and elevating regional benefits for everyone. We call this system, this 217-mile system, from the Green Swamp in Lake Apopka to the Atlantic via the Ocklawaha and the St. Johns River, the Great Florida Riverway. Three scientists today are going to share the big impact science behind the restoration of this system, looking at it from a national, state, and regional scale. Joining me at Pugh Hall at the University of Florida is Jim Gross, Executive Director of Florida Defenders of the Environment, Casey Fitzgerald, our co-chair of the Forest Science Committee, and Cindy Swerko of Gainesville Sun. We are all socially distanced and wearing masks. So here's a few housekeeping items that'll help you today. This briefing is going to be in a hybrid fashion. Casey Fitzgerald and I will be presenting live with the help of Dustin Howard and Charlie of the UF AV team from Pugh Hall. Steve Knoll, who has helped us with this presentation, is being presented via videotape. And all our other speakers will be presenting via Zoom technology. All of the Zoom guests online are welcome to submit questions at any time, which we will be handling through the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and those will take place at the end via your questions. This program, if you have friends or neighbors or colleagues that you would like to have them see this, it will be posted in its entirety at 5 p.m. on the freetheocklawaha.com website, and it will be kept there for several days. Today is a defining moment for the Ocklawaha River, part of the Great Florida Riverway. I say that for many reasons. Governor Ron DeSantis has made protecting Florida's water resources a priority from the beginning of his administration, investing in special places we love like the Florida Everglades and the Apalachicola River. We are hopeful that he will make restoring our favorite place in Central Florida and Northeast Florida, the Great Florida Riverway, another priority project in 2021. There's also been an increased interest in outdoor recreation as we weather the COVID pandemic, and there is an opportunity to bring in diverse recreational use, improving recreational sports fishing, and a continuous riverway for boaters from Lake Apopka to the Atlantic. With the Rodman Dam past its life expectancy, the systems requiring massive herbicides each year just to keep the ramps and river navigable, and the use of the reservoir declining by thousands of users each year, it's time to make a change. And we all need to understand, this is very important, that won't be easy for everyone. It's our collective job to identify solutions that both restore this nationally significant system while providing economic revitalization to the river communities like Palatka and Silver Springs and other surrounding area. Later, I'm excited to present the Ocklawaha 2021 for Everyone plan, a 5-step plan to leverage the economic and environmental benefits of this vital riverway. But before we launch into our hopes and our visions for the future, Since today is the 50th anniversary, let me provide a short clip from Steve Knoll, UF history professor and co-author of Ditch Your Dreams. I keep this book beside my desk and refer to it often because if I'd like to say, history provides us the wisdom to inform us on how to create a better future. And here's Steve.
In the 1960s, at a time flush with liberalism, we can do anything. We can put a man on the moon. We can reshape Florida, so we might as well build this canal. It starts in 1964. It seems to be going great guns. Everybody's excited. And then people begin to raise environmental questions about it. Not just conservation, but land preservation, and the fact that the Ocklawaha River particularly is a wild and natural resource that is irreplaceable and irreplicable. If we destroy this, we're going to destroy something that we can never have again. The damage that was done is best seen when the reservoir is drawn down, and that kind of ancient forest, that ghost forest is there, and you can see those trees that are all cut at the same level. It's a really eerie sight, but it's a really kind of sad sight to see what had to be done in order to make something that never was completed. But there's still remnants of it infrastructure-wise, particularly on the Ocklawaha, especially the Rodman Dam. People have been fighting to get the dam down for as long as the dam has been up. So why is it still up here? Every governor, with the exception of Scott, has said take it down, and that's Democrat as well as Republican. Half of the population or more of Putnam County has not been alive when that river flowed freely. So this is all they know. So if this is all you know, this is natural. And 50 years, that's a long time.
Good morning, and many thanks to Steve Knoll for that very contextual history lesson. I'm Casey Fitzgerald, and as Margaret Spontak previously noted, I have the honor of serving as co-chair of the Free the Ocklawaha River Coalition Science Committee. Personally, I recently retired from the St. Johns River Water Management District after 27 years, having spent the majority of my time there as the Assistant Director of the Department of Water Resources. More interestingly, however, I first became engaged with this now age-old Cross-Florida Barge Canal issue in the mid-1970s as an undergrad at UF, stuffing envelopes and doing other odd jobs for Marjorie Carr, who was indeed working feverishly to ensure that the Cross-Florida Barge Canal first was not resurrected and to start pushing for reversal of the sweeping ecological damage that had already occurred. I would now like to share the roster of the Coalition's Science Committee. All of the individuals on this committee are serving in a voluntary capacity, are exceptionally well qualified, and represent a wide range of expertise. The Coalition will continue to work with these dedicated scientists to provide unvarnished scientific facts on all the germane matters in this effort. So it's now time to move on to a high-level overview of the science that supports the ecological restoration of this region, brought to you by three distinguished experts. Our first presenter this morning is Dr. Edgar Lowe. Dr. Lowe is a PhD in zoology from the University of Maine. Now retired, Dr. Lowe was formerly the director of the Division of Environmental Sciences and, subsequently, the chief scientist at the St. Johns River Water Management District. He is also graciously currently serving as my co-chair of the Coalition's Science Committee. During his 30 years with the 19-county Water Management District, Dr. Lowe directed the development of science-based, practicable solutions for the protection, management, and restoration of wetlands, lakes, springs, rivers, and estuaries. In his tenure as chief scientist, he provided scientific leadership for all of the agency's major natural resource programs. And prior to his retirement, Dr. Lowe received the Richard Coleman Aquatic Resources Award for his outstanding contributions to restore, protect, and advance our understanding of Florida's aquatic resources. Dr. Lowe.
Well, what I'd like to say today is that you can't get a complete understanding of the importance of a free-flowing aquawaha unless you back up and take a broad systems view. And this is really, as the title of my talk says, a tale of four ecosystems. And each of those ecosystems has regional, national, and in some cases even global significance. We're talking about the Silver Springs, which is one of the largest freshwater springs in the world. We're talking about a subtropical river that once harbored enormous populations of fish and wildlife and high biodiversity. The Lower St. Johns River, which is one of the nation's subtropical rivers with a very abundant and productive estuary. And then finally, the coastal ocean offshore of North Florida and South Georgia called the South Atlantic Bight. So it's fitting also that this talk occurs on World Wetlands Day, in that this is an opportunity to restore thousands of acres of wetlands in a state where millions of acres of wetlands have already been lost. So that is an opportunity that should not be passed up. However, this could also aptly occur on World Rivers Day, since we're talking about the improvement of the major tributary of the St. Johns River and of the St. Johns River itself. The St. Johns notably being threatened at present from the uncertain aspects of sea level rise. This talk could also occur on World Springs Day, since one of the affected ecosystems would be the Silver Springs, one of the globe's largest freshwater springs, as I mentioned earlier. Finally, this talk could aptly occur on World Oceans Day, since many of the migratory species of fish and invertebrates that would be affected by an improvement in the flow of the aquawaha occur and continuously migrate back and forth between the coastal ocean and the mouth of the St. Johns River, and finally even further upstream into historically up into the aquawaha. So when the dam was constructed, it was clear that it altered the flow of water into the lower St. Johns. It altered seasonality and somewhat reduced the flow. But there were two flows affected by the dam, the second of which I think was not originally appreciated to have the significance that it does, and that was the biological flow. Historically, and for thousands of years, there was a continuous flow of organisms, a biological flow, if you will, between the ocean, the lower St. Johns, the aquawaha, and the Silver Springs. That flow, the biological flow, was severed when the dam was completed. We have the opportunity now to envision restoring that flow and all the benefits that would accrue from that. And these benefits would not just be environmental, they would also be economic. Some of these migratory species of fish, such as the American eel, heretofore had significant economic value. And there is a chance here to improve their populations. Migratory fish populations along the eastern seaboard have declined over the 20th century. This is an opportunity to improve those populations. And the St. Johns is especially important in that regard because the species that have historically used the St. Johns, many of them are genetically unique along the eastern seaboard. So we have that opportunity. In addition, we have the opportunity of building in some resilience against the uncertainties of the impacts of sea level rise on the lower St. Johns and its biota. So again, to really appreciate this, you've got to back up and consider that all four of these ecosystems would be improved by restoring a free flow to the Ocklawaha River. So as John Muir said, he was a great naturalist, environmentalist, and writer, said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. Well, the Ocklawaha may not be hitched to everything in the universe, but it's certainly hitched to the economy and environment of northern Florida and even southeastern Georgia through the Atlantic coastal bight. So we need to appreciate that this is an opportunity to improve the Silver Springs by increasing the populations of fish that have access to the springs and even endangered species such as the manatee, to improve the lower St. John's, the lower Ocklawaha River by restoring thousands of acres of wetland and improving another thousands acres of wetlands downstream of the dam, improving fish populations and restoring the severed flow of biology between the lower Ocklawaha and the lower St. John's, improving the lower St. John's River in terms of the species of invertebrates and fish that need the estuary for their reproduction and growth. And finally, improving populations of migratory fish and invertebrates in the South Atlantic bight. It's timely. As mentioned earlier, it's been widely recognized for nearly 50 years that this is something that needs to be done. I believe the time has come. We shouldn't let this opportunity slip away, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. It was a real pleasure to hear you speak again. It's been a while. Our next presenter is Dr. Andrew Carter. Dr. Carter has a PhD in environmental science and policy, as well as a law degree from the University of Miami. He is currently a senior conservation policy analyst with the Defenders of Wildlife, headquartered in Washington, D.C., and with boots on the ground here in Florida. Dr. Carter works on wildlife conservation policy at the Center for Conservation Innovation, where he researches and analyzes conservation governance strategies and emerging policy issues. He also works with other like-minded organizations to develop innovative approaches to habitat and species protection. Before joining Defenders, Dr. Carter was research director at Miami Waterkeeper, an environmental nonprofit focused on water quality, habitat protection, and climate change resilience in South Florida. He taught graduate environmental law and policy courses at the University of Miami and practiced law in New York and Florida. Dr. Carter.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Our nation and the world are facing a biodiversity and extinction crisis. Globally, nearly 1 million species are at risk of extinction. In the United States, thousands of species have been designated as threatened or endangered under the Endangered Species Act, and many thousands more qualify for listing. Now, the primary driver of extinction is habitat destruction. Wetlands are particularly important for biodiversity. They're highly productive, incredibly diverse in terms of plants and animals, and important for climate change, carbon sequestration, water quality, and a host of other ecosystem services that directly benefit the communities near them. And the United States has seen tremendous wetland loss since this country was founded, with the lower 48 states losing more than half their wetlands since the 1780s. Florida is one of the most biodiverse states in the country, containing many important ecosystems and a biodiversity hotspot for threatened and endangered species. Out of the approximately 131 species found in Florida that are protected under the Endangered Species Act, around 70% are only found in Florida. Furthermore, Florida's lands and waters function as an important site for threatened and endangered species outside the state, particularly migratory birds that travel to Florida in the winter. But over the past several decades and even further back, Florida has been hit hard by overdevelopment. And the massive water management infrastructure projects that you see across the state, like the one that we're as at issue here, has severely reduced the amount of biologically important wetlands. Since this country was founded, Florida has lost more than 9 million acres of wetlands, the most of any state. Within the state, the Ocala to Osceola corridor is a particularly important area for wildlife, including threatened and endangered species. And the Ocklawaha River and its floodplain are an important part of that corridor, providing habitat for numerous species of fish, birds, mammals, and reptiles. Breaching the dam and allowing a free-flowing Ocklawaha River would help restore approximately 7,500 acres of forested wetland habitat and recover an additional 8,000 acres of currently stressed forested wetlands. It could provide important habitat connectivity for vulnerable species like the federally endangered Florida panther and the state-protected Florida black bear, These are both species that need a lot of space. It could provide additional nesting and roosting habitat for the federally threatened wood stork. And a free-flowing Ocklawaha River would provide essential warm water winter habitat to hundreds of manatees, including for as many as 500 at Silver Springs. And it could also provide habitat to Atlantic and short-nosed sturgeon that historically were found in the St. Johns River, but are very rare if ever found. Florida, to sum it up, is important to national biodiversity, and the Ocklawaha River floodplain is important to Florida. We are dealing with a mass extinction in Florida, in the United States, and around the world. And as I mentioned before, the primary driver of this extinction is habitat loss. And the only way to head this off is not just to protect habitat, but to restore it as well. Breaching the Kirkpatrick Dam will help in that fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, for helping put this opportunity in a global and national perspective. Our final science presenter today is Dr. Quentin White. Dr. White received his PhD from the University of South Carolina's Baruch Institute for Marine Biology and Coastal Research. He is currently both a professor of biology and the executive director of the Marine Science Research Institute at Jacksonville University. Dr. White has written numerous research and technical papers and reports in his many years at JU. He is also, quite appropriately enough for this situation, currently undertaking research on the history of human impact on the Florida environment, and especially on the St. Johns River, with a focus on manatees and water quality. In addition to his roles at Jacksonville University, Dr. White serves as a consultant to the City of Jacksonville's Waterways Commission and also on our coalition's scientific committee. Before we go to Dr. White, just a reminder to send in questions for our scientists to address. Now, Dr. White.
Good morning. And thank you, Dr. Lowe and Dr. Carter, for setting me up so well with your comments. An estuary is a semi-enclosed body of water open to the ocean, but diluted with fresh water. A little bit of an academic description of what the lower St. Johns River is. But when we look at this, we begin to realize that the freshwater input is the key to that. The semi-enclosed piece of it means that it's open to the ocean. And sitting east of us sits the Atlantic Ocean, which is a virtually unlimited amount of salt water that can come in. So anytime we slow down the flow of fresh water into an estuary, we impact that estuary. We destroy the submerged aquatic vegetation that relies on the fresh water. That in turn leads to decrease in habitat for the estuarine important species, the fish, the manatees, and the things that we enjoy about the river. We always don't think about the fact that having an impact that something like the Ocklawaha would actually impact the lower St. Johns River, but it in fact did. As we have shut off and slowed down that flow of water, we've impacted the lower St. Johns. We've seen salinity gradually increase. We've lost submerged aquatic vegetation. We're losing trees along the shoreline. Cypress trees cannot survive in salt water, or even slightly salt water. And so we have this sort of combination of things going on. Now, it's not just the estuary of the St. Johns River either. I report, and most of you are familiar with the Apalachicola and the impact that the water use in Atlanta has had at Lake Lanier. And so we see this coupling between freshwater usage, uplands, and the impact in the wetlands at the mouth of the St. Johns River in particular. So when we see that interruption of flow, it has a tremendous input downstream. Why do we care? Well, 90 to 95% of the economically important species spend all or part of their life in an estuary. This is extremely important because fisheries plays a huge role in Florida economy. If you know, there are about 4 million Florida anglers that put about $11.5 billion every year of economic impact into the economy. Something in excess of 100,000 jobs are related to the freshwater and saltwater industry. And so we look at this impact and we think about, is the system resilient? You hear a lot about resiliency today. This is the ability of the river to respond, or any system to respond to any kind of disturbance. We think about economy and we talk about the resilient economy. We talk about human health and the resilience of human health. Well, ecology is the same way. We have to sort of think about how we can make this system more resilient and respond better to the disturbances we've imposed. Governor DeSantis has in his budget $1.8 billion to establish a resilient Florida program over the next 4 years. Restoring the Ocklawaha can play a huge role in this. 50 years ago, Richard Nixon stopped the program because we began to realize the economic impact and the environmental impact. It's time to free the Ocklawaha. And so I'll turn this back over to Casey at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Casey, Ed, Andrew, and Quentin. For decades, we focused on the discussion possibly on the dam or just the reservoir or one user group, one species, or a singular environmental benefit. But you've provided a comprehensive scientific overview of the benefits of a free-flowing river for all Floridians. Both the science and the economics have supported restoration of this great Florida riverway. But we're still facing today two major challenges. A new challenge, the economic stress that the COVID pandemic has put on the state this year, and the fear of change and uncertainty and loss from anglers and other citizens who maybe never saw the real Ocklawaha, a river alive with fish, cooler by 20 lost springs now covered by the weight of the dam, and a cooler, swifter river with less water quality and invasive plant issues. An advisor of mine once said, she said, I think that the science plan got ahead of the people plan. And I think she was right. So we've put together a 5-step plan focused on an important year that will address both of these challenges. A revenue neutral plan with no significant outlay of cash, but with critical work that engages people in imagining and providing input on what a better Ocklawaha would look like to them. That process is well underway. Now, some have suggested through the years, let's do the restoration and then we'll worry about recreation. But one wise Putnam County Commissioner said, we have to show people what they will gain, not just what they will lose. We have to show people what they will gain, not just what they will lose. Let me show you a few examples of the concepts the UF students just created. The first one is called, the students called the Bartram Outpost. If you're familiar with the Rodman Reservoir and the old Cross Florida Barge Canal, half of that will be filled, the western side, on partial restoration, and half will remain open to the St. Johns River. This creative idea creates a state-of-the-art bass and angler tournament center on the portion that connects to the St. Johns River, giving direct boat access to the St. Johns River, but also adding in things like a viewing dock for fishing and possibly manatee viewing. It also provides shallow ponds to the west that can be used to teach kids and families fishing, like maybe the Joe Budd Center in Tallahassee, and it can be used during hunting season for duck hunting, like the Orlando Wetlands Park. A very creative concept. The second one and these are just a few of the many great projects, is what we call the Kirkpatrick Recreation Center. Now this is down at the existing dam, as you can see the before and after picture. It's a very upgraded view of that by adding in, leaving the remaining boat ramp, but make that better, and add in potentially a restaurant, a outfitter center, a playground, and making this even better than it is today. So these are just some concepts which I hope that you'll go on to greatfloridariverway.com and look at all the rest. So how that works as included in our framework for our Ocklawaha 2021 for Everyone plan. So the first item on the plan, and if you look at 1, 2, and 3, look at them as a package. So it would include an implementation of funding and a recreation plan to be completed by October 1, with St. Johns River Water Management District as the project manager. We have a great plan that was created in the late 1990s that our science team that you just saw on the list has reviewed and have found it to be relevant and usable today. We just need new timelines, new cost estimates, and we need to build in this important recreation plan. St. John's would be the ideal project manager because they're located near this great resource. And they have studied this resource for years and know about its fish, its water, its habitat. Another part of that first 3 steps is to identify and secure funding sources before we go to the state for final resources. Our teams identified a lot of federal funding sources that can pay for things like dam breaching, which is happening rapidly across the nation, flood protection, habitat restoration, and recreation. With the governor's authorization, agency staff can begin to pursue other funding options to lessen the state outlay. And I am very certain we will have willing partners. It only makes sense, and this has been the case with Everglades and other areas, where the federal government years ago made an awful mistake that funding was available to help restore those areas. The third thing, the recreation plan we've talked about, focusing on the Putnam and Marion counties. So imagine what I just showed you, a world-class tournament hunter and angler center situated on the St. Johns, continuous paddling trails, an updated Rodman recreation area, a steamboat driving tour, and more. I hope you go to greatfloridariverway.com and look at those concepts to just get us beginning to think together. And while restoration is occurring, it is important to target economic development resources for Putnam County, existing and creative resources to bolster Putnam's economy as the restoration process takes place. And then finally, you take that implementation plan, the funding package that has been identified, and the recreation priorities, and then you ask for additional legislative resources in 2022. That's the Ocklawaha 2021 for Everyone plan. By doing this incrementally in 2 stages, we know our true cost, our updated cost, we have more time to develop funding partners, but most importantly, we have another year to do that people plan, to show people what they can gain, to get them involved in what's most important to them. And speaking on people, we have 2 things we wanted to share. One is we've been at work building our coalition to include more organizations, more user groups, and we've just recently started adding more businesses. And here on the next 2 slides are the results. We have 40 nonprofit organizations that have joined us in support, and many other informal groups and businesses. We've also asked in the last few weeks people around the state and the nation to support our request to Governor Ron DeSantis to restore the Great Florida Riverway. And they've responded mightily over the last few weeks. Today, I'm going to ask Elizabeth Neville, Senior Associate for the Gulf Coast for Defenders of Wildlife, to share those exciting results.
Thank you, Margaret. I am thrilled today to share that in a show of widespread support, over 20,000 members of the public have signed letters asking Governor Ron DeSantis to restore the Great Florida Riverway by reconnecting the Ocklawaha River. These letters were collected thanks to a collaborative effort led by several groups and individuals, including Defenders of Wildlife, American Rivers, Save the Manatee Club, Sierra Club, 1000 Friends of Florida, the Center for Biological Diversity, St. John's Riverkeeper, Paul Nasca, and Jenny Carr. These 20,000 letters demonstrate that there is broad public support for restoring the Great Florida Riverway and the benefits to Florida's economy and environment that this will bring. Now Governor DeSantis can know how much this unique river system matters to thousands of people in Florida and beyond.
Thank you to all our supporters and members who supported our vision for a free-flowing Ocklawaha and a reconnected Great Florida Riverway. So Jim has been tracking some questions. We've got a few special questions here. And I think the first one we would pinpoint or ask Dr. Carter, and then Ed Lowe might want to weigh in after that. Dr. Carter, our first question is, how many manatees would the project help?
Best estimates, it could lead to about 500 manatees additionally in Silver Springs and about 300 more in the Ocklawaha Springs. So that's several hundred at least.
It's an important bit of data. And as Bob Knight, the head of the Springs Institute, would say, this would become potentially the strongest inland manatee viewing place in the state, and would considerably, I'm from Ocala, Silver Springs area, considerably help the economy of Silver Springs. Okay, we have another question, and I will direct this to Ed Lowe. The question is, we talked about this 5-step plan, but how long will it take to restore a free-flowing river once again? And kind of what are the major steps to doing that?
Well, it would take some time to restore a free-flowing river. The plan that we reviewed was a 3-step plan, which I think could easily take in the neighborhood of 3 years. We don't want to do this willy-nilly. So the plan that was developed earlier envisioned stepped drawdowns and a sequence of plantings and dredgings and fillings that are required to restore the historic river channel and its associated tributaries. So I would guess in the neighborhood of 3 years, perhaps a bit more, once we get underway.
We have a question, I think, here for Quentin White. And the question would be, I understand that restoring the river would create 150 million gallons a day of water downstream, helping the St. Johns River estuary. But doesn't that water just get lost to tide?
That's a good question, but that's a misnomer in some respects, because what you've got is a dynamic system in which something on the order of about 5.5 billion gallons of water flow out of the St. Johns River every day. And there's a tidal flow when you get down to the mouth of the St. Johns River. But it's that ebb and flow that actually makes the estuary such a productive ecosystem, because it provides the habitat for the juveniles, as well as protection of those juveniles from larger predators. So it's not that the water is lost to the system as much as it becomes part of the system. I'll point out that right now, when the damming of the river has caused a reduction in flow of the Ocklawaha, which was the largest tributary contributing fresh water to the St. Johns River, because of evaporation. When you create that much surface area in Florida, you get all that evaporation, and that water is truly lost to the environment, if you would, coming down in rain, contributing to climate change and things like that. So it's not that it's lost to the system, it becomes part of the system.
Thank you, Quentin. That is a great answer, and thank you for your time today. So before I want to thank UF, Charlie and Dustin here. the media and all that attended online. Don't forget, you can send them to freetheocklawaha.com after 5 o'clock today, and any of your friends or colleagues can see the rebroadcast of this. I want to thank Steve Knoll for arranging for us to conduct the event at UF on this historic date and allowing us to use that great clip of him talking about the history. Thanks to you, all the speakers today, and the team that helped put this together. If you had questions, I know there were many that we didn't get today. We will answer them straight away via our chat. But in closing, I'd like to say, remember the Ocklawaha 2021 plan for everyone, where people and the science come together for a better Great Florida Riverway. Thank you and goodbye.